Welcome to the first drawing demonstration of a series on how to draw facial features. We're going to be going through 4 different things about facial features, of how to draw them, using the tips and tricks that we talked about in my first video. The main one being be observant, and then also working on contrast, shadowing, shading, doing the big basic shapes first, and then working way into details, and all kinds of those tricks. I'll try to post those in this video as well. So, first video is going to be on human eyes. So, I've got a photo here that I'm going to be using as a reference photo. It is really important to have good reference photos. Without a good reference photo, it is really hard to draw. I have drawn from really crappy reference photos, and it is one of the hardest things to do. So, make sure you have a good reference photo before anything else. So, one of the things that I'm going to do to be more observant is I'm going to use the trick where I fold this photo down so I can focus just on what I'm drawing. I don't want to have all the other stuff pulling my attention away from the part that I'm really focused on. I'm going to not fold it down too much because I want to also draw it in context. I want to make sure that I draw the areas around those eyes as well. But I do want to make it so I can keep this thing close. I want to be able to jump my eyes back and forth from my drawing to my reference photo really easily. If I can't do that, then it becomes a much harder thing to do. Okay, so one of the things about being observant is I'm going to notice the big basic shapes first. I'm going to start with this eye over here. And for big basic shapes, I'm going to use the opening of the eye first. I'm not going to draw the pupil or the highlight in the eye or the eyebrow first. I'm going to draw the big opening and maybe the eyelid, some of the eye socket underneath. And I'm going to start to use those big basic shapes first. I'm going to also use a little bit of that trace and transfer method where I'm going to kind of go over it, hover over it, and then use that shape that I'm making down here. So as I start to trace and transfer over here, and my eyes right now, obviously you can't see them because you're focused on my pencil, my eyes are looking up and down between my drawing and my reference photo. And I'm trying to draw it about the same size, and I'm trying to draw really light at first. Okay? Drawing really light at first. So a big basic shape of the eye opening first. Notice it kind of swoops down. I'm noticing it's a little more curved on the top. It's got kind of a flat spot right here and a flat spot right here. And it's more curved down at the bottom. So I'm going to make sure that I'm being observant about that. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to put in the iris, the colored part of the eye. Okay. Colored part of the eye, I'm looking, sometimes I look for little shark fins. If you look at this white area right here, it ends up making it look like a shark fin. So if I start to draw that in, I can actually draw that shark fin, and that's going to help me get that iris in the right place and get it the right size. Okay. Iris barely, just might touch the bottom eyelid. It might not. I'm looking at that shark fin kind of shape, that triangle on this side too. I've got a little bit too big right here, so I'm going to close it up a little bit. I'm trying to keep everything light at first. Okay, I can always erase stuff if it's lighter. Okay, so I've got my kind of shark fin thing. On either side, I'm going to start to draw where the pupil is. The pupil is the opening that lets light in. Okay, I'm going to also kind of outline where the highlight of the eye is. I don't want to do too much shading in that area because I want to leave that nice and bright. Though that highlight in the eye is really important because that is what brings life to eyes. Okay, without that highlight, eyes have a tendency to look really dead. I'm going to also do a thing to draw lighter. This is kind of a trick that a lot of people don't realize that they do. Sometimes I'm going to hold the pencil looser to help me draw lighter. I'm going to also hold it farther away from the tip. If I hold it farther away from the tip, I'm going to have a much better chance of drawing lightly. Okay, I can draw much lighter if I go about it that way. Okay, so I'm going to hold it really nice and light, farther away from the tip, as I start to lay in where the eyelid is. Notice I'm not drawing eyelashes and all that other stuff yet. Okay, I'll get to them. I'll talk about how to do those best. Okay. Okay, I'm going to also start to map out. I'm going to blur my vision and kind of observe some of these highlights right here. So there's a nice bright highlight right there that I need to make sure that I kind of give myself a map for. So I'm kind of mapping things out as I do this. Right here, it's going to be a darker area. This is where I start to put things in context. I'm going to draw the surrounding area. If I don't draw that surrounding area, it's not going to look like a complete drawing. There's some highlights right here that I got to make sure that I leave in. So I'm going to kind of map those into. The highlight comes all the way in here. One of the things you'll start to notice is the bottom eyelashes are not as full as the upper eyelashes. Most of the time, our eyelashes start to run out on the bottom edge towards the inside of the eye. You notice the other one does that as well. So you need to make sure that you don't just throw eyelashes in there just because you know they're there. Be observant, pay attention to what these eyelashes look like and what this pupil looks like. How big is it? Is there multiple highlights? This one actually has multiple highlights. I don't know if I'll tackle all that in this demonstration or not. If it was for one of my own drawings that was a finished thing, I would. But this is a beginning level demonstration, and so I might not in this one. I'm going to kind of map out where this part of the eye socket is down here too. That way I have that. So I'm kind of making a roadmap to start my shading. I'm going to also start a roadmap for where the eyebrow is. Sorry, sometimes it gets hard to talk while I'm doing this. Uses kind of different parts of your brain when you start to draw and you start to talk. So sometimes it's hard to do both at the same time. All right, so I have a lot of my map here. I can start to do some shading. Okay, so I'm going to look for where the dark areas are. Obviously, the pupil is a really nice dark area. I'm going to start to think about texture, texture of the skin, texture of the eyebrow, the eyelashes. I'm going to also look and see like these eyelashes kind of curl on top of each other. On the outside, they curl out. On the inside, they start to be straight and start to curl in. They also fade out on this side. And they also create a shadow up on the upper part of the eyeball. This part is more white than up here. So I'm going to have to shadow this to make the eyeball look round. Okay? That's part of that being observant rule. If I'm observant, then I'm noticing things that other people might not. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this stuff in. Somebody obviously is having fun with the intercom, if you can hear that music. They're testing it out today. So I'm going to start to throw some of these eyelashes in, create some of that shadow. I'm going to also go in and start to get the iris. Things radiate out and around the pupil. And I'm going to create a little bit of texture in there as well, and then I'm going to layer some shading over it. As we get better and better at drawing, I'm going to teach you some other tools that you can use, like blending stumps and electric erasers and things like that. Some of my favorite tools are those specialized tools. But right now we're going to be more focused on being observant than using special tools. So I'm going to start to shade this in. And blend this out. I notice that it's dark right here. That's that be observant. Noticing what other people might not. Still creating a little bit of texture in here, leaving a little bit of highlights in there in places. Down here it's not as dark. Up here it's darker. So I need to make sure that I get that darkness in. Work that texture in. You notice I'm leaving that highlight. That highlight's important. Okay. And I'm going to start to bring some of the eyelashes in here. I'm going to also start to get that upper eyelid because I don't want to lose that. It's an important part of what makes this look like this particular eye. Anytime you're starting to draw something, you want to look at how this looks, not what you think it looks like. That's a big part of building your drawing skills and being observant. So I'm going to start to shade this in, because that's all got a little bit of darkness. I'm using a little technique called circularism for parts of this shading. Instead of just kind of scribbling it in, I'm actually using small circles. Sometimes that makes some nice smoothing that kind of blends it together as you're doing it. There's a bunch of little highlights in this part right here that I'm not going to necessarily do every single one of, but I'm going to make it so there are some highlights that are left. And start to build that in. Now, this doesn't really have a line, so I don't want to leave a real strong line there. When I first drew it, it looks like there was a line, but now I'm trying not to leave so much. And I'm going to actually do a real light line right here while holding my pencil farther away from the tip. And that's where the eyelashes are going to fall onto. So I can start to do some of these eyelashes right on that edge, right on that line, because the eyelashes don't go all the way into the eye. There's the thickness of the skin there. Some of these eyelashes are longer, some of them are shorter, so I'm going to make sure that I don't make them all the same. If I make them all the same, it's going to look a little goofy. It's going to look like kids drawing, okay? We're trying to become more and more skilled. Out here, there's more, some of them are longer. They kind of go random directions, so I'm going to make sure they go random directions. Build some more of the top ones in here. All this is dark. Some places I can't see where it's eyelash and shadow, so I want to make sure that they kind of blend together in my drawing as well. Okay, I'm going to create some of the shadow down here. This I am going to use a little bit more line work because there's some wrinkles in there. Real fine ones. There's some shadow right here that I'm going to get in. And using a little bit of that circularism to create this dark area right here, start to put things in context. And a little bit of darkness right in here. It's a little darker right there. I'm going to have to start to fade it out to create this highlight right here. And we'll start talking about that eyebrow, what we're going to do with that. I'm going to put the rest of the eyelashes in too, to kind of cover the space between the edge of the eyelid and the upper part of the eyelid where it starts to tuck into the eye socket. So I'm going to start to build this in. A little more circularism for this area right here. Build a little bit of shadow right here. Once again, I'm being observant. I'm noticing stuff. I'm going to build a couple little lines in here that are more defined kind of things. I'll leave that highlight right there. I'm going to build this shadow just a little bit darker, and I'm going to finish out my eyelashes. I have a tendency to jump around, because if you work too much in one area, you'll get it done, but then when you build another area next to it, it won't look as done. Okay, so I jump around a little bit as I draw. Okay, you don't have to be focused all on one, finishing one space. I'm going to start to shade this area in for my eyebrow, and then I'm going to go back in. I might blend a little bit there, just to kind of get a nice blend going, kind of work it out a little bit so things start to blend together. The thing I don't want to do is I don't want to smear over the whole thing. That's a bad idea. Then I'm going to pay attention to the direction of the hairs and the density of them. In some places they're a lot thicker, packed together. Some places they're farther apart. Some places they're longer, shorter. Okay? You notice they start to change direction. So I'm going to pay attention to that. Out here, they're going more straight across. Up over here, they're more upright. So I have to make sure that I actually pay attention to that as I'm putting this eyebrow in. And I'm following my map for the shape of it. So I'm keeping those hairs kind of in that space that I made. Keep in mind, one of the big things about all this is we're trying to ramp up what we're doing from where we're at. Great thing about drawing and art is you can always do it better. It's a never-ending kind of video game of learning new skills and leveling up. And that's one of the things that's kept me involved in it for as long as I have been. All right, I'm going to call that pretty close to done. I'm going to do a couple little wrinkle things in here. But other than that, I've put it in context. I've done the big shapes. I've worked my way down into details. I've blurred my vision to make sure that I kind of capture where it's light and where it's dark and what shapes those are in. And I've got a pretty solid drawing of this eye. I'm going to move over and do this one eventually, but for right now, I'm going to pass it on to you. Go try this.